Welcome back to the Rugby Rundown, our Tuesday program with Jan de Koning, former editor of Rugby 365. Jan, the man on the ground there, he's actually attending the All Blacks practices, and he knows stuff. That's why we're talking to him. Welcome back.
Thanks very much. I was literally on the ground yesterday in Athlone watching the All Blacks train. So very interesting. But I think the big news from their camp is obviously George Bell's injury, calf injury, which has resulted in him going home, and another player being called up. The problem with George Bell is he's one of four hookers, but Cody Taylor also arrived here with a partly calf injury, or was busy. To use a cliche, a coach's cliche, he's tracking well to be available for the test. So, I mean, we know Cody is a tour captain, and RD is obviously not here. So Cody has got a lot of media work to do and public appearances and that sort of stuff. So you don't see much of him on the training ground yet. So actually, they only got two hookers. So if they have an injury early in the game on Friday night against the Stormers, they're going to have problems in the front row.
All right, let's just start with the obvious question. How much did you see? I mean, there's lots of talk on our channel specifically about the tempo at which the All Blacks play, the way they keep the ball, they carry it, they pass it, and they form a ruck, and they do it tremendously well under Dave Rennie, but also a lot more than they used to do it in the past, almost double. Did you see any evidence of that, or were they a bit more circumspect, a bit more, just going through the paces so you guys don't see anything?
They did a lot of skills training. And the skills trainings tell you clearly that they don't want to get involved in an arm wrestle with the Springboks. That's obvious. So the type of skills they're doing, like offload in it, even before the tackle or in the tackle. So those sort of skills training, they definitely. So yes, it's already evidence that the All Blacks are going to play a more expansive game, for a lack of a better word, or to use it cliche. And they're not going to, obviously, you only see the last 15 minutes of training. So the tactical things and what they do in the fly-offs and that sort of stuff, they won't give you away. I mean, we've got a team announcement tomorrow afternoon, and then we'll know who's starting and who's playing. Clearly, they are going to play a more expansive game, and that was very obvious with the type of skills training that they were doing yesterday.
Yeah, no, the interesting thing is, if you put one and one together and you get seven, the fact that they want to play this high tempo game, and the question marks about their fitness and durability, and even before the test started, the first injury, I mean, that's a big setback, not just for the player, but I mean, must be a bit of a worry for the All Blacks. The research that we've done is the All Blacks have typically done around 400 carry passes and rucks on average per game, which means if you add the carries, the passes, and the rucks together, you get around 400 maybe. For the Nations Championship, it was 581 on average per match, which is huge. So the question is, did you see any signs of that maybe being a problem, or do you see any signs of that maybe being a problem? Fitness maybe catching up. I hear that he's been putting the players through an extreme fitness regime for the past 7 weeks or so. Is it sustainable? What did you see?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. I mean, it wasn't the warmest day in Cape Town yesterday. It was actually a very great winter's day. And they were definitely sweating by the time we were allowed in, which, like I said, it's the last 15 minutes of training, which is when they just did the skills stuff, which is better than most teams. Most teams, you get the warm-ups in the beginning where the people are stretching and you see nothing. Yeah, at least I could sense that the skills give you an indication. So they were definitely worked. I mean, the players, by the time they got to talk to us, they were definitely sweating it a bit. So yeah, you can. I suppose you can see it in the games more. That I don't think fitness would be a problem for them. At sea level, they'd be able to cope with that. The Stormers also like to play a game, and the reality is the Stormers might need to turn this into an arm wrestle, not to get sucked into that freewheeling game that is going to suit the All Blacks.
Do you expect the All Blacks to show their hand against Stormers? Is that what they're going to play like against a test team, or is it maybe just a bit of a sleight of hand, almost? Not showing too much, just going through the paces. This is not going to be the first choice Stormers team. It's not going to be the URC team, even though it's supposed to be, but it can't be because of the Springboks and injuries and everything else. So, do you expect the All Blacks to show what they're going to be capable of, or is it just going to be a little bit of just win it?
Yeah, I think they definitely will show some stuff. You will see some of their game plan because they've got to use these games, and they will use these games to set their style of play, set their marker out They're not going to show all their cards. So I'm not saying you're going to see the whole picture, but you will see glimpses. Just like at training yesterday, you see glimpses of what they're going to try and do. You will also see glimpses of what they will do in the test. Because you practice in these games, whatever you do in the practice field, you try out in these games. So you have to try some stuff to see if it works. And yeah, that's the big thing. So they definitely will try some stuff, but I don't think we'll see the whole picture just yet.
So being at that practice now yesterday, did you pick up any sense of the excitement, or are they approaching this? Because I think for us, it's probably the biggest thing in many years to happen in South Africa in terms of rugby. Yeah, we play the All Blacks every year, but it's 1 or 2 tests maybe. This is a full-blown tour for the first time in 30 years. What did you pick up from the All Blacks themselves about the way they feel about this tour?
What they do feel is that they're enjoying the fact that it's starting in Cape Town. As Wallace Titi said to us in the interview, Cape Town loves the All Blacks. So, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I mean, we saw last Friday as well with over 4,000 people turning up to welcome them. So there probably will be a few of their supporters there. People still refer to them as the Cape Crusaders, but it's genuinely just people that support the All Blacks. They're in their black regalia, and so we'll see that, and I enjoy that. Now there is a sense of excitement for the tour. The problem is most of these players have never toured South Africa before. A large chunk of them had never been to South Africa because the Super Rugby stopped in 2020. I mean, a guy like Wallace Titi started playing he made his All Black debut in 2024. So when he started playing for the Chiefs net, or when he started playing Super Rugby, South Africa was already out of the Super Rugby. So those guys would love this opportunity of touring and seeing a bit of South Africa. Yeah, I mean, starting in Cape Town, what a nice place to start the tour. And then you go up to you guys there in Gauteng. So, yeah, and hopefully by the time they return to Cape Town, they're proper tired.
Well, on that subject, I mean, coming up against the Stormers under Norman Laker, who's known for his double-shoulder tackles and, quite intense defense. The question is not so much, can their fitness levels sustain their carry passes and rucks, but can their fitness levels sustain being tackled back by a team like the Stormers, who's extremely physical, and the Springboks are also going to be extremely physical. I asked this question because there's a sort of a running joke about Super Rugby being defense optional. I've said it many times. They're not used to being tackled as hard or as often or as as intensely as they would experience against the South African teams. How would they adapt to that, or would they adapt to that, do you think?
That's the interesting part, and that's what you'll see on Friday night. So you will see how they deal with that type of defense, because they clearly know, and I'm going to go back to the pictures, the glimpses that they showed us at training yesterday, is they clearly expect a physical defensive line, a fast shooting up rush defense, whatever you want to call it. So that intense defense, they're expecting that. So a lot of their offloads be off or in the tackle or just before the tackle. So they have variations of what they do. Do the first guy offload? Do the first guy pretend to offload and offload to another player, or passes to a player who immediately offloads again? So there's little variations all the time, and they're clearly planning for that. So part of their preparation, and that's why I say we'll see glimpses of how they deal with this type of defense, how they deal with the physicality of South African teams. You'll see on Friday night, and you'll quickly get a good idea of are they up for this. I think they're skillful enough. I mean, we all know this is, like you just said, it's not the Stormers A team. It's probably a combination between the A and B teams. With maybe a few juniors thrown in for good measure. So, yeah. And a couple of veterans. I mean, we know Deon Fourie is back from his knee surgery, and hopefully he can finally retire on his own terms. As he keeps saying, he wants to retire on his terms. We all know what that means. So, yeah, we'll see some glimpses, or we'll get an idea of exactly how able and capable they are of handling the physicality and intensity of South African games.
You raised the issue of the Stormers, the juniors and the seniors. Let's talk about those firstly. The first one is the junior, Yakin Ahmed, making his Stormers debut against the All Blacks, and it's probably going to be Beauden Barrett, because Ruben Love looks to be the test fly-off. I mean, Beauden Barrett, the name alone should give you chills, against a very, very good rugby player, make no mistake, but still a very young rugby player, Yakin Ahmed. Isn't that throwing him to the wolves a little bit, do you think?
I definitely think we're going to be cautious here. And we're not criticizing the Stormers. If they feel the guy's right, then play him. If you think he's capable, he's mature enough, play him. But just remember, under 20 World Cup and the All Blacks are two very different things. So that's the first thing. And I'm just scared, and this is just my personal, it's got nothing to do with the quality of the play. I think he's one for the future and a bright prospect. But we already saw what happened to Sasha. So Sasha is the same thing. When he came on the scene, there's just a hell of a lot of hype around him. At some stage, either himself or the Stormers management started buying into this hype. They didn't make him a bad player. They didn't make him. The fact is that he lost focus and he went through a bit of a slump. I'm just worried that we're overhyping these players. So if the Stormers believe that he can cope with that intensity, that he can cope with the international team, by all means, try him out. And if he comes through that, we've got another fly-off. I mean, we already got enough fly-offs in the Springboks, but who knows? We got Vusi there, and now if we got Ahmed also, then suddenly we got 5 fly-offs of international or capable of international standard rugby. So I'm just a bit cautious that we overhyping these youngsters too quickly. But that's an old South African problem. It's nothing new. We always tend to do that with all our players, not just fly-offs.
I just have to mention one name, Hafid du Toit. And
just keep Nick Mallet away from the fly-off. The rest is fine,
We're talking about Yakin now. Just quickly, another issue that people have been talking about. Did he make the right decision to sign with the Stormers? Because even though he's behind Sasha, he's probably going to be behind Yuri for a bit. Shouldn't he have gone to another franchise, maybe like the Lions or something, that he would have been able to play more often? Get more game time? Or is it actually the better idea to stay with the Stormers and sort of being gradually introduced to it? The All Blacks thing is sort of, a necessity. That's just needs to happen now because they've got no other choice. Everybody else is either injured or in Argentina. But, shouldn't he maybe have signed for a smaller union to get more playing time?
He's going to get game time at the Stormers, no doubt. So just remember this. Sasha will be with the Springboks until at least end of November. So he will only be available in December. So you've got the Currie Cup now. So you can play him in the Currie Cup after the All Black game. You can play him a bit in the Currie Cup, maybe the playoff places to give him a bit more experience. Then you can play him in the early stages of the Super Rugby. So he'll URC, apologies. You see the All Blacks in town, so I'm already thinking Super Rugby. So he'll get a bit of URC game time and stuff. So I think that he will get game time, and I don't think that's a problem until at least December. And then, who knows? There's other ways of keeping the young man busy.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Right, let's talk about the senior. You mentioned Deon Fourie now wanting to go out on his own terms. You said we all know what that means. I don't know what that means. I think I'm stupid. Tell me what it means.
No, it's simply that he wants to go out with one big bang. He doesn't want to go off on a stretcher, and he wants to play one last big game. So is this his last season? Who knows? Yes, maybe it is his last season. I just hope that he doesn't get another injury, because I don't know how many more injuries his body can sustain. The guy's 39. He's turning 40 soon. So, and he's a legend. I mean, you don't want to see a player like that who played 77 minutes in a World Cup final after he was moved to flank because his neck couldn't sustain the scrums. He was sort of feeling the pinch already in the scrums, and then he played in the 23 World Cup final for 77 minutes, and he did a damn fine job.
At hooker.
Yeah, at hooker, yeah. When we only had one specialist hooker, and we played a utility forward. So yeah, and Rassie is still, we know he's busy building more utility forwards that can play hooker, flank, number 8, next time prop as well. We got a prop who can play hooker. So back to Deon Fourie. I foresee that they will have one last big game. So if this is his last season, then there'll be a big home game where they're going to make a big fanfare of Deon Fourie. So that's what it means, going out on your own terms. You go out playing a rugby and you say, thank you, I've played my last game. Not, oh dear, I'm going off on a stretcher again.
Yeah, Jan Saffontein made that call, remember? Feeling that, he doesn't want to jeopardize his entire future for playing rugby, and he actually terminated his contract voluntarily 2 years early. Yeah, I know what it means. I just wanted you to tell me.
I understand.
Just quickly, last thing on the All Blacks. Cody Taylor saying that the All Blacks miss playing against South African sides. miss Super Rugby. Is that not just making the right noises because you're in a different environment? That's what we South Africans want to hear, how much they miss us and everything else. Or do you think there's actual substance to that statement that they miss us?
It's the physicality of and the variety of the South African game. In New Zealand, you play the same type of opposition all the time. Australia play the same type of opposition all the time. And you're right, Super Rugby defense is optional. Now they get a chance, and we spoke about this earlier. They get a chance to play against a physical defense, test themselves against and we saw last year how it went in the Springboks. In Auckland they were emotional and they got up for that game, and then a week later they fell flat, and we gave them a proper hiding. So, and just remember, this is a young team, theoretically a young team or younger players than normal. So under Dave Rennie, a new coach, quite a few young players. These guys don't understand South African. So yeah, it's absolutely vital for them that they actually experience playing against the franchises, playing against different franchises. You go up to Ellis Park and you play the Lions, who we all know love to run, and the Lions do play a Super Rugby style of game where they just, defense sometimes is very optional at Ellis Park. So I think I think it's more than just hype and blowing smoke for the South Africans. I think they are genuine that they're missing playing the variety of rugby that the South Africans provide.
I joked with our friend Ari Ougaard the other day that Brian Pienaar does just almost have a defense coach. And I think, Ari said to me, "You're going to get a call. You're probably going to get a call from Jacques Fourie now. What is this about the Lions defense being optional?" All right, listen, the other side of the rugby rivalry is, of course, the Springboks, and they're in Argentina, 26 players. Last night we had a press conference with Dion Davids and Krappie, Morné van der Berg. Very well coached media. I mean, thank you for the question. Every single time, thank you for the question. Just noticeable, don't you think?
Very, 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 yeah, very, very polite.
Yeah, it was funny. Anyway, so to me, it was a bit of I don't know, popcorn, spook awesome. There's nothing said of any substance, or did I miss it? What did you think?
Bless Dion, bless his soul. I mean, he's such a nice person, but he is so guarded. Somewhere in life, whether it was when he was at Boland or whether he was at the Kings, somewhere he got burned badly because he is so guarded. So, and I understand, that they get coached not to give too much away, and I think Krappie said a bit more, especially about the injury. So, because I know Dion, I didn't want to ask him the first question, so I went straight to Krappie's, and he actually gave us some good stuff. We'll have a article up later about Krappie and his quotes, and about how he got, didn't go into a slump and a dump and get over himself when he got that injury, that biceps, and he had to undergo surgery, and that can, especially for a scrum half when you have to use your arms, that's a type of thing. And yeah, he's a hell of a player, and like you said, his faith, that's the one thing, and I appreciate, MV, you know me, I appreciate when players are open about their faith, and you can see when they are sincere. And I think Krappie's that came through. He didn't beat himself up. He relied on his faith to stay strong. He had a good medical team that helped him, and he worked on his skill and fitness as best as he can. So yeah, those were the things that came through. So I felt I got a lot more value out of Krappie's. Morné van den Berg. I think somebody called him Van den Berg recently, so it's Van den Berg. So yeah, I agree with you. There was a bit of puff there, but I think Dion Morné was good value for me.
The thing I noticed about Morné, maybe I had missed it before, but he bulked up a little bit. Saw his neck and stuff. He looks like he did a lot of work in the gym while he was injured, I suppose. Did you notice that?
There's a good chance that he did some strength work to help with the arm. So sometimes they will work on things, strengthen other muscles. Because if you've got one injury, so let's say your left knee is injured, and then you only work on the right knee, and by the time you come back, you often find that players then injure the other leg because they've overcompensated on the other leg. So that's the one thing. So he definitely did some gym work. And we'll see him when he comes in. Maybe it's also the way he's set, but I think he would have been, on a few gym sessions where he did the legs and arms and shoulders and that sort of stuff. But he's clearly done a lot of homework.
Part of the thing about this test against Argentina is the fact that it's for us, South Africa, it's more of a warm-up, and for Argentina, it's more of a must-win. It's two completely opposite approaches. Rassie obviously making all the right noises, or the Springbok coach is making all the right noises. No, we're taking it seriously, and but in effect, let's be honest, it's going to be a bit of a a return to form for 10 of those 10 teenage players, Sasha and Louet and Sia and everybody else, and Eben maybe. And so it's not going to be the same intensity as the Argentinians would approach this by. Argentina had a woeful Nations Championship. They won 1 out of 3. They ended up with the fly-off being banned or not yet banned. We don't know what the thing is, but he can't play. The captain was not playing, and lots of upheaval there. The coach, Felipe Contraponi, walking out of the press conference. They're going to be much more serious about this game. So let's talk about the Springboks firstly. What do you expect the Springboks to do this weekend? What kind of a team are we expecting to see? Are all the old guys going to come back? They haven't played together they haven't played much this whole entire year, never mind playing together. I'm expecting a very disjointed performance, and I wouldn't be surprised if we lost, to be perfectly honest.
No, that's a reality. That's a reality we have to face, that we could lose this game. This could be the end of that. What are we, 11 matches now under Rassie as head coach, 11 match winning streak. So that could be the end. The important thing is, and yes, I know we want to win. And yes, of course, no team ever goes into to lose. But the importance for us in this game is that we get game time into the players. You just said, the first game shouldn't be the first test at Ellis Park against the All Blacks. That would be madness. So get them some game time. Take your medicine and get game time into Eben. We need Louet and see how good his body is. See if that hamstring holds up. Sasha, how's he looking? So all those things. There's a couple of guys. There was actually 9 because Franco Moster didn't go. He didn't pass his fitness test. So Franco Moster. So there's 9 of them that desperately needs game time. So yeah, and that's also why Rassie is working so hard, because I think Franco Mostert is another one of those players who's working hard to get to the World Cup next year for one last go at the World Cup. Do the triple, do the hat trick of World Cups, and some of those guys. There's a litany of like England did it after they won. What's it called? The Dad's Army. Where the players are just 1 year too old. I think we were in 2015, our players were just that 1 year too old. I mean, we got pretty close, 2 points in the semi-final to the All Blacks. But, sometimes there is that risk that maybe the players are just a year too old. But I'm sure Rassie will be wise enough to, and that's what this game will tell you. Are these players still up for it? And if it gives you the answer that no, they're not, then Rassie knows he's got to move on. And I think he will move on. Rassie will tell Eben, listen, no, you're too old now. Not that he's too old to play rugby, but you're just not up to it anymore. Your body's not going to make it. Same with Louet. If Louet gets another shoulder injury, I think he's like Iron Man already with all the plates and blades and screws that he's got in his body.
The metal detector goes off when you walk through it, I'm sure. The big question, of course, is Sia, and not just being the first choice open side flanker, but the captain. But his fitness and everything else, there is a big question mark around him. Now everybody's saying, Paul de Villiers is going to take over, but Paul de Villiers and Sia play completely different styles of rugby, even though they play in the same jersey. So what do you think the future holds for Sia? And what happens if Sia doesn't make it? Something happens along the way, and do you think Rassie's already planned for that contingency?
Oh, he's busy planning. No, there's no doubt. That's why a guy like Pieter-Steph took over the captaincy. So we got some really good. We got Jesse that can captain. We got Pieter-Steph that can captain, and Pieter-Steph and Paul de Villiers in the same team is something I would really look forward to. You remember like a Andre Venter, Heinrich Brousseau type combination back in the old days. A really good player at the breakdown, a really hard-working, energetic young player, and then a seasoned guy that's as tough as nails and can do the hard graft in the dark places, and you allow this youngster to run all over the field. So, yes, we've got options, and I'm sure Rassie is busy with his options, and he's got other players in there as well. But I think Paul de Villiers definitely put his hand up. And those of us who may have doubted that he's ready, and he's definitely an option. And I wouldn't be surprised if he rotates quite a bit or comes off the bench quite a bit for Sia. Sia makes it to halftime and Paul de Villiers comes on for the second half. So, yeah, no, he's definitely the future.
Okay, and later tonight, the Springboks going to announce the team. That's early in the morning in Buenos Aires, but it's late at night in South Africa. Harry and I are going to be doing an instant reaction once we know what the team looks like. But to me, the most interesting question is going to be eighth man. Jasper Wiese is not there, Evan Roos is not there, so you're not going to have your bowling ball kind of eighth man approach running over everybody. Cameron Hanekom is there, and Elrich Lowe is there, I suppose. What are you expecting to see at eighth man?
So let's start. There's a very interesting thing where this question came up in the press conference last week. Rassie made the point is that Paul de Villiers has trained at number 8. Marco van Staden is trained at number 8. Elrich and Cameron trained at number 8. And then obviously there's Jasper, and then Andre Esterhuizen that trained at number 8. So he's already, that's what I'm saying to you, he's planning. So and this makes sense if you understand Rassie's thinking. A number 8 only has a number 8 on his back when he's pushing in the scrum. The rest of the time he's got a very different role. You want Andre Esterhuizen, if he's going to play number 8, you want him in the midfield. So when there's a ruck or something and it's your ruck, you want Andre Esterhuizen to take the ball up. So you'll play that inside center role and free up your other backline players. If you want somebody to defend a fly-off channel, then you want Andre Esterhuizen to defend in that channel. So your bigger players is definitely looking at more like a Dwayne Vermeulen type, not like Dwayne Vermeulen because that's a very different player, but a physical player and a player that can do the hard graft outside of the scrums. And the scrums, you're going to have whoever has got the number 8 on his back will be at number 8 in the scrums, so at the 8th man in the scrums. But the rest of the things, it depends how do you need to go clean a ruck? Do you need to go defend in that channel? So Rassie, like I said, I think he mentioned this, if I'm correct, 6 or 7 guys that are regularly training at number 8, and that includes Andre and Marco and those guys.
Yeah, Marco's played for the Bulls at 8 before, and he's also played for the Springboks at 8 against Scotland. When he came out, he went and played 8. But, it might only be at the scrums. But we saw Cobus Wiese playing 8th man against, was it Georgia? And he struggled in the scrums as well. The scrums is a critically important part of what the Springboks play like. And, to pick up the ball from under your feet, and these are quite tall guys, it's not something that you just pick up overnight. So, yeah, it might make sense they only play in the scrums, but the scrums are important. He's referring to the fact that they only play in the scrums, and they're actually more important than line-out. So if you have 2 tall line-out jumpers, you don't need a 8th man or whatever. It makes sense on paper, but it doesn't really make sense to me in practice.
Yeah, but that's why Rassie is the Springbok coach and we're just the commentators.
You're absolutely right. But we're allowed to speculate, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. No, I love speculating. So you want to go to Cobus Wiese. I think it was his first match in a test match. So how much training did he do? Will he be better the next time he plays there? Can he cope with that? Will he be more familiar with the Springbok setup? I think more Cobus is, and if I look at the way rugby is using him and what he did in the Nations Championship, I think Cobus is definitely our backup number 4 and at the lock. And just the occasional, in case of an emergency, 8th man. But
or 7.
For mostly, I think he's maybe a 7, but I don't think so. I think he's there mainly as a lock.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, you put a guy like Andre Esterhuizen at scrum at number 8. Now he goes and scrum at number 8. And the ball comes out quickly. We saw in the past how important it is for the 8th man to control the ball sometimes. And, we start pushing them forward. You can't let the ball come out the back. But you've got an inexperienced guy that used to play center, now suddenly has to be an 8th man. That's why I'm getting at the skills at being an 8th man in the scrums are actually quite important, even though that's the only time that is actually an 8th man, isn't it?
So yes, very much so. So a guy like Andre Esterhuizen is far more agile and skillful than a guy like Cobus Wiese. Not because Cobus Wiese is a bad player, he's just a different build of player. He's a chunky player. Andre Esterhuizen is a big boy, very tall. I mean, when you stand next to the locks, Andre actually can be mistaken for a lock. He's almost as tall as most of our locks. So, but for such a big player, he's incredibly skillful. I mean, I've seen him put through some incredible kicks, line kicks and grabbers. Although he doesn't do it often, he's got the skills to do that. So he's more likely the player to adjust, just like he quickly adjusted to flank. He's more likely to adjust to number 8 than, say, a Kobus Wiese.
I don't know. I remain unconvinced. But I mean, we put the cart before the horse now. We don't even know what the team looks like. If I had my choice, if you had your choice, Cameron or Elrich at eighth man.
Cameron almost against Argentina, almost Cameron, because it's going to be a arm wrestle. They're not, they're going to, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be scrappy. They're going to try and spoil and make it as unpleasant and unstructured for you as possible, so that you can't get into a rhythm. So you need grinders there. You're going to need guys who's going to really work hard and go into the dark places, as they say.
But is that Cameron? Is Cameron not the more flashy, fast player that can run, through teams? And Elrich is the more physical player who can actually run over them. I have seen him play a
physical game, but yeah, no, I have seen him play a physical game. But you're right. Maybe Elrich is the more physical guy, or the more grafter, a better grafter. I just got a funny feeling that Russia's going to come up with something really interesting. So we'll see in a couple of hours. So
yeah, that's fine. Okay, Jan, I have to let you go. We've been spending a lot of time on this, but it was awesome. Thank you so much. It's so interesting. I can't wait to see that team. Remember, guys, Harry and I are going to be doing an instant reaction, but 7:30, 7:45 to 9, depending on when we get the team. We sometimes get it a little bit earlier, so we're going to go the moment we get it. So look forward to that. Thanks, Jan. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, and as always, man, it's so lekker to chat.